Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who makes us holy with mitzvot and commands us to engage in words of Torah. So at this point, we are reaching the end of the book of Genesis, the last parsha. And at the end of the book, we read, "So Joseph and his father's household remained in Egypt. Joseph lived 110 years. Joseph lived to see children of the third generation of Ephraim. The children of Machir, son of Manasseh, were likewise born upon Joseph's knees. At length Joseph said to his brothers, 'I am about to die. God will surely take notice of you and bring you up from this land to the land that God promised on oath to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob.' So Joseph made the sons of Israel swear, saying, 'When God has taken notice of you, you shall carry up my bones from here.' Joseph died at the age of 110 years, and he was embalmed and placed in a coffin in Egypt." It's always interesting to see that Joseph is buried in an Egyptian manner, although his intention at some point is to return to the land of Israel. So he is living in the midst of two cultures, two civilizations, we might say. And as Reconstructionists, we do say, as we say that Reconstructionism, the core teaching is Judaism is the evolving religious civilization of the Jewish people. Evolving as in Judaism has changed and does change through history. Religious as in it addresses questions of ultimate and overarching meaning. And Judaism is the civilization of the Jewish people, which is to say, Judaism encompasses all of the cultural forms and concepts, institutions, arts, learning and music, languages and foods, and social institutions of the Jewish people. Just as Christendom is a civilization, now referred to mostly as Western civilization, the Islamic world is a civilization, India and China are civilizations, Judaism too is a complete civilization of the Jewish people. However, it is small and geographically dispersed. Certainly over the past 2,000 years, maybe over the past 2,500 years, it's existed in large numbers of small bubbles where we've been scattered, not as individuals, but scattered as communities. But as society opened up, that began to change. Throughout most of Jewish history, most Jews have not been living as isolated individuals, operating as single persons inside a non-Jewish community, as we see Joseph doing. That's the exception until now. For most of our experience, Jewish individuals have been living ensconced within Jewish communities, in shtetls, in ghettos, in neighborhoods. Sometimes in a small town with Jews and non-Jews in Europe, for example, you would have a Judengasse, you'd have the Jewish street, and that part of town would actually be incorporated into its own separate municipality, a separate legal entity operating in a parallel world with the non-Jewish entity. As Jews would live in separate worlds, separate bubbles, separate communities right next to the non-Jewish worlds. And all of that began to change in the Western world First with the dispersal of Jewish individuals from Spain and Portugal after mass expulsion in the 1490s, and then with the French Revolution of the 1790s and the Napoleonic Wars, which spread new ways of being and thinking across Europe, and then for Russia and large parts of Eastern Europe much later, around World War I. As a result of those ruptures, so many Jews today live in situations more analogous to the situation Joseph finds himself in the Torah, living his life as a Hebrew in Egyptian society. Translate that for us, living as Jews in an American society. Those of us who describe Judaism as a civilization have to ask ourselves, what does it mean to be part of a civilization if we are living in an American society? What does this Jewish civilization look like today? Where is it? Who experiences it? Does it actually exist, at least outside of Israel? And indeed, the shape of Jewish civilization did drastically change in the 20th century. In 1900, we were living largely in Europe, especially Eastern Europe, to a growing extent in America, and also in North Africa and in areas around the Persian Gulf. The biggest languages spoken by Jews were Yiddish, maybe Ladino, certainly Arabic. In 2000, we were structured very differently. We had a nation state in Israel, and then the United States, basically these two big centers by our standards, big centers. And the two biggest languages, English and Hebrew. Outside of Israel, we are a network of loosely connected, loose-knit communities. And we have to hope that that is enough to sustain a civilization. So in the world of Jewish Reconstructionism, we talk about diaspora Jews living in two civilizations simultaneously. For example, here in America, part of American civilization and Jewish civilization. And to illustrate, we habitually use two alphabets: a Hebrew alphabet that connects to Jewish civilization, an English alphabet, English Latin-based alphabet that connects to American civilization. We strive to operate in two languages, Hebrew and English, to varying degrees. We have different calendars that we operate by: the Gregorian calendar of Western civilization and the Hebrew calendar of Jewish civilization. In fact, one of the greatest obstacles to full participation in Jewish life is that the calendars of each of our civilizations often clash with each other. At certain times of year, one calendar is telling us to stop and take note of a special holiday occasion, and the other calendar is telling us to speed up. Take, for example, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Sukkot taking place just as the academic calendar is beginning. One of the biggest reasons it is easier being Jewish in Israel than any other place in the world is because the society makes room for the rhythm of Jewish life. The academic calendar in Israel, for example, simply does not begin until after Sukkot, end of conflict. In the diaspora, we are living in two civilizations simultaneously. Israel is the only, for the most part, the only place in the world where Jewish civilization is dominant. Unless you consider some of those smaller bubbles like Williamsburg, Borough Park, New Square, New York, or other Hasidic communities in cities like Antwerp. What they do is a remarkable feat, done out of a lot of commitment with a lot of energy. In the non-Orthodox world, where this sort of self-contained full immersion experience is most likely to be experienced outside of Israel, is inside Jewish summer camps. That's probably the only place. Inside Jewish summer camps. That is the power of Jewish summer camps to shape Jewish identity. It is one place, maybe the one place, where Jewish civilization is given enough time, space, and energy that it can be fully experienced as a dominant social force. For us, maybe the one place outside of Israel. But summer camps, only for a very short time, when we allow the pressures of other social forces to take second place. For most of us, throughout most of our lives, we never get to feel a time when we are not wrestling with the collision of these two civilizations we are part of. We always seem to find ourselves balancing the pressures of American life to try to squeeze in Jewish life. That's why actually so many synagogues have Sunday schools. Sunday morning is when America made time for local religious education. And then, because we have two calendars, we have two sets of New Year's. Were you wondering why I was talking about all of this for so long? New Year's. We have two sets of New Year's. Obviously, Rosh Hashanah, but I said sets also because on the Jewish calendar there's 4 New Years, right? Rosh Hashanah is the New Year for the year. First of Nisan is the New Year for months. First of Elul is the New Year for animals. Tu B'Shvat is the New Year for trees. But we count the years beginning at Rosh Hashanah. And on the Western calendar, of course, that's this weekend. And you'll notice, by the way, that wine is used in both holidays, but very differently. It's the wine is for a blessing in Rosh Hashanah. Okay, horns are used, by the way, right? Right? Both New Year's have horns, and for different reasons. Both New Year's have funny hats for different reasons. But New Year's resolutions. But some New Year's are heavier on the resolutions and lighter on the wine, and some New Year's are heavier on the wine and lighter on the resolutions when it comes down to it. In Israel, actually, they do not escape the influence of the Western calendar. And in Israel, actually, you'll often note there's 3 calendars going on there because they're incorporating 3 civilizations in some of their, there's the Islamic calendar, there's the Jewish calendar, there's the Western calendar. Those who speak Hebrew, it's a little difficult to speak about New Year's Day because the way you say New Year's Day in Hebrew is Rosh Hashanah. But Rosh Hashanah, that name's taken already. So January 1st is not Rosh Hashanah. January 1st is called Sylvester. I always think of cat, something, Sylvester. Actually, I wondered for a long time where that name came from, but Saint Sylvester Day, December 31st. Big in Central Europe. Celebrates Pope Sylvester I, who was Pope during the time of Constantine. But for us today, it's important for us to be conscious of how much our lives are shaped by what might be termed a clash of civilizations. You've heard that phrase, clash of civilizations? Well, I think of the dynamic of living inside 2 civilizations means that internally we have a clash of civilizations going on. Where Jewish civilization pulls us one way, American civilization pulls us another way. Even if we cannot always change that situation in our lives, it is important that we be aware of it. Because just by being aware of it means we may make different decisions if we're conscious about it. And to tell one story, this is maybe an apocryphal story, And some of you perhaps have heard me tell this story before, but it is a story told about Mordechai Kaplan, the founder of Reconstructionism. It's said to have been told by Mordechai Kaplan, and he might have told it, but it might not have happened either. But not every story that didn't happen is false. Some stories are true, even if they didn't happen. So this story is about 8-year-old Mordechai Kaplan. He, 1889, sailing into New York Harbor. He was born in 1881. He came with his family, 1889, into New York Harbor. So the story is that they arrived on July 4th, which made 8-year-old Mordechai very happy because he understood that on July 4th there were fireworks. And because it was a holiday, they weren't going to be able to disembark from the boat and go through customs, go through, I don't know if it was Castle Garden or Ellis Island. It might have been those immigration points. They were closed July 4th. So they were going to have to stay in the harbor, in the boat. So they were going to be able to see the fireworks from the boat, which was all very well and good in the view of 8-year-old Mordechai. Until his father said, as the sun was setting, his father told him it's now time to go below deck and daven mincha marav. Daven the afternoon and the evening service. And of course, by the time the evening service was over, so were the fireworks. So this illustrates the clash of civilizations that we live in. So I said, it could be an apocryphal story. I don't know that it happened. I don't know that Mordechai Kaplan told the story. I'm told that Mordechai Kaplan told the story about it happening to him. It doesn't matter because it's true. It's a true story, whether it happened or not. Joseph is perhaps the largest example, maybe the only example in the Torah that we have of someone, an individual Hebrew, an individual Jew living in a larger society as an individual. He's also the first, maybe the first example of what came to be called the court Jew. Often a court, whether it was a king's court or a prince or a duke, they would have the king would appoint a Jewish individual into some very prominent position, whether as physician or as treasurer or in Spain, one of the Muslim countries of Spain, as a general. And this individual then held a very special role at court and then also represented the whole Jewish community. And this individual then had to walk a tightrope between the ways of his own community and the ways of the royal court, just like Joseph has to do. And and it was a high stakes tightrope because at that level of power, it's also very precarious. It's privileged but precarious, not only for him but also for the entire Jewish community. Sometimes when a court Jew fell out of favor, there were anti-Jewish riots in the streets. That's part of today's story. Why there's so much fighting right now in the Middle East, because of all of that violence in the past. And the understanding that Israel existed so that that violence would stop. But in the Torah story, we can read how within a generation, once Joseph is gone, things will start to go very wrong. But that is a reading for next week. So for now, let's celebrate finishing the book of Genesis, and let us rise because we're going to at least chant the last verse and then say, Chazak, Chazak, Venit, Chazek. Strength, strength, and be strengthened. Vayamat Yosef ben me'ah ve'eser shanim v'chantuhu otoho v'yisem ba'aron b'mitzrayim chazak chazak v'nit chazek. Shabbat Shalom.